The number one thing that is holding you back in life is unhealed childhood wounds and unresolved traumas. And so if we have these unhealed wounds and unresolved traumas, what we end up doing is we store these things in the body, in the nervous system, in our energy fields, and in our subconscious mind. And so we just carry around all this unresolved shit with us, basically. It's like carrying around a bunch of rubbish. So you imagine if you have a rubbish bag and you don't put it in the rubbish bin, you're just walking around with it. Then say something else happens that creates a wound or a trauma within you, that's another rubbish bag. And then again, if you're not dealing with these things, healing them and resolving them, you're going to just keep collecting more and more rubbish bags, and it's going to get harder and harder to carry on in life with all this rubbish, right? So we need to learn to dump this rubbish, get rid of it, so we don't have to carry it around with us. And so this is why it's really important to revisit our childhood and to heal ourselves. And a lot of people who start that spiritual journey start the healing journey. And so I started my healing journey back in 2019, and it has changed me as a person. It has benefited my life so much. I have evolved and become a much happier person. But not only that, even like my relationships with people have improved because of it. And so because we store these things in the body as well, these emotions and unresolved traumas and these wounds, it has been scientifically proven that these things can manifest as disease and illness in the body. For example, if you're clinging on to anger and resentment from childhood and how your parents treated you, that can manifest into cancer. And so this is why it's really important, if we want to, keep ourselves healthy, to address these issues and not ignore them. And so there's a documentary I also watched on this that I think is worth watching if you're interested. It's on the Gaia app and it's called Emotion. And there was a wee interesting story in that documentary where this man had to go and see this horse. This horse was walking around with a sore leg. And they couldn't find out why it had a sore leg. Like, there was nothing wrong with it, but it had a sore leg. So this man came to work with this horse to find out what was wrong. And he was asking the owners a lot of questions, trying to get to the bottom of what was going on with this horse. And he asked if it's been mistreated by people. Could it be a dog that's upset it, a cat? And then he was like running out of options. He was like not really sure what's left. And then he said there was a bird that flew in the sky across his head, and he said, "What about a bird?" And then the owner goes, "Hang on a minute, there was an incident with the bird. What had happened was this little bird had fallen out of its nest and landed on the ground, and it ended up dying, and the horse witnessed it. And the horse felt like this sadness because it was witnessing this little bird dying and it couldn't help it. And so the horse stored that in the body, and that's what caused the sore leg. And when the man realized this, he basically worked with the horse to release this emotion in his body, and the horse's leg was fine after that. Now, the other reason we want to heal these wounds is because, like I said, these things are in our subconscious mind, right? And if we have these unresolved wounds and traumas, they can also cause us to self-sabotage our life. For example, let's say you were presented with a really cool opportunity, but in childhood you were treated, some of us get treated poorly, where we develop these self-limiting beliefs where we think we're not good enough, or we're not worthy, or there's something wrong with me. And so if you get presented with this opportunity and you have a self-limiting belief from childhood that you're not worthy or you're not good enough, what will end up happening is you will think you're not worthy or good enough for this opportunity, so you will find a way to sabotage it. So this is why it's really important to do this work. Now, I'm going to share some tips with you on how you can heal yourself from these things. So the first step is to acknowledge you need healing. We have to acknowledge that we have these wounds and these unresolved traumas that we need to address. And then the second step is to do inner work and shadow work. So inner work is basically just going into your internal environment and doing the work in here. Now, what science shows us, quantum physics, is that your internal environment is what creates the external environment. So the external environment is just the internal environment projected out. So if you've got a lot of rubbish going on internally, it's going to get projected out into your external environment. So this is why we put the focus on the internal environment and do inner work. We start figuring out what's going on inside of us. And shadow work goes with inner work as well, because what shadow work is basically, we all have a shadow, and this is a psychology term, and the shadow mainly gets developed in childhood. And what it is it's like, it's the unhealed and repressed parts of ourselves. And it can come up in a number of different ways, causing problems in our life. For example, when you have an emotional reaction to something's happened where you've been triggered, and you have this emotional reaction, that is the shadow that's coming up. And so by doing shadow work, what it actually is like, you work with your shadow so that you can find what your wounds are. You can find where you need healing by doing this shadow work. And so if you've never done shadow work before, I will link a video at the end of this one that will teach you all about shadow work. It's the ultimate guide for beginners. And another aspect to inner work is also inner child healing. So even as adults, we still have our inner child within us. And, you know, that little hurt inner child that has these wounds is still there. So part of doing the inner work is doing inner child healing. So we want to heal our inner child, because again, our inner child can get triggered and come up as well. The third step is belief work. Now, what quantum physics shows us is that beliefs create reality. What you believe to be true, or the stories that you're telling yourself. For example, some people may tell the story that I'm always sick. So because that's the story or the belief they have, that is what they manifest in their reality. And so when we have these unresolved wounds and traumas from childhood, they can create these self-limiting beliefs. So a self-limiting belief is like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. You know, you may think you're not worthy of being a millionaire. You're not worthy of like making lots of money. You're not worthy of being in a healthy, loving relationship. So by doing belief work, we have to find out what our limiting beliefs are, because these beliefs are deep within our subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is what controls 95% of your reality. So these self-limiting beliefs will basically sabotage your life. So by doing belief work, it's a way to become aware of what our self-limiting beliefs are, and then we reprogram ourselves with new and better beliefs that we prefer, so that we can manifest a better reality for ourselves. And if you don't know much about belief work, I have another video on that I will link at the end of this one as well, that will teach you more about how to do belief work. Now, the fourth tip for healing yourself is just applying spiritual practices. And I'll give you some examples. So breath work is a great spiritual practice, and there are different types of breath work. And so there is a type of breath work called somatic breath work. Somatic meaning the body. And so, because like I said, we store all this rubbish in our bodies and we're carrying them around, right? So what breath work does, somatic breath work to be specific, is that it's using your breath in a specific type of way to bring up the stored emotions and trauma in the body. It's a way of releasing it from the body. And it can come out in a number of different ways, right? It could come out as screaming. It could come out as crying. It could come out as laughing. But that's the emotion that's being released. Another spiritual practice is meditation. Meditation can be great for a number of ways. We can use meditation as a way to become aware of ourselves, aware of these self-limiting beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, what's going on internally. You can use meditation as a way to quieten down the negative inner critic, because sometimes we just have that negative inner critic that can also stem from childhood and how we were treated. You can use meditation to even reprogram your mind and rewire the brain. So meditation can be used for so many different reasons, and it can be a great tool to use to heal yourself from these wounds. And another spiritual practice I recommend is something as simple as journaling. So journaling is just a great way to get your thoughts and feelings out of your internal environment and just putting it onto paper. Just dumping it onto paper, and you will walk away feeling so much better for it. Like, I've walked away from journaling feeling like I just had this free therapy session. Speaking of therapy, you can go and see a therapist if that is your style as well. Like, you don't have to do work on your own. You can, there's options of like going to a therapist, but there's also options of like doing like courses online, like spiritual based courses that are designed to guide you with healing as well. So you can keep your eyes out for, those sorts of things online. And yeah, there's heaps of different options you can do. Now, the fifth tip that I will give you is what's called the reframe technique. The reframe technique is basically changing the meaning that you give things. So firstly, everything in life is neutral. There is no built-in meaning. It is you who gives things meaning. So for example, let's say someone lives in an area where there's a lot of rain, like it's always raining, and they give the meaning of rain a negative meaning. So it's like, oh, it's always raining, I'm so sick of it, it's always cold and wet. So it's a negative meaning. Then you have someone that lives in a dry area where they hardly ever get rain. And when it finally does rain, they're so happy. They're like, yes, it's raining. They give it a positive meaning. So there's no built-in meaning. It's you who gives things meanings. Now, when we've had a bad experience, from childhood or even in your adult life, wounds can come from like your adult life as well, and traumas. But a lot of things stem from childhood. But when we revisit these things, we want to change the meaning from a negative one to a positive one. So when something bad's happened to us, where we feel like a victim, someone's hurt us, obviously we're going to give it a negative meaning. So when we revisit these past hurts, we look at the situation that happened and we reframe it, we change the meaning from negative to positive, because that's how we are able to let it go. And the way you change it from a negative meaning to a positive meaning is by looking at how it served you, because there is a lesson in all these negative situations that happen. There's always a lesson in it. It's trying to teach you something, so it's serving you in some type of way. So you look for the lesson. What did I learn from this? How did this serve me? And then you're able to create this positive meaning around it, so then you're able to let it go. Which leads into number 6, and number 6 is also very important, and that's forgiveness. We have to forgive the people that have hurt us. From childhood, as an adult, we have to learn to forgive. And now forgiveness, but firstly, the way you get to the place of forgiveness is by using the reframe technique, changing the meanings, right? But forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. So forgiving a person doesn't mean that you have to have them back in your life. It doesn't mean you have to be on good terms with them. You don't have to tell them you even forgive them. It's about you. So forgiveness is, it's an energetic release. So because, someone does you wrong, you generally will have like anger and resentment towards that person. This person did this to me, and you're all angry about it, right? So when you forgive, you're releasing that energy from your being. And that is what leads you to be able to create a much better life for yourself, because your energy is creating your reality, right? And so we have to learn to forgive people. And I had to go through this process with my own family, because I wasn't treated the best as a child. There was abuse and neglect there. I had a lot of anger and resentment. I didn't really have much to do with my family for a good 10 years or so because of it all. And then I had my spiritual awakening, and I started doing all this work, and I learned to forgive my family. I realized I reframed it all, but I also realized like my parents did the best from their level of consciousness. Everyone's in these different levels of consciousness, and people just do their best, even if they're being abusive. Sometimes they were abused as kids and they're just copying that same behavior. So it's just understanding kind of with a bit of empathy and compassion for them. They did their best from their level of consciousness, even though what they did was wrong. And yeah, I just had to learn to forgive my family, but I now have really great relationships with all of them. There's no anger and resentment. There's no negative energy. It's positive and loving. And so that has really changed my state. That has really improved things for me. I'm a much happier and positive person because of it. And the last one, number 7, and this is a really important one as well, and that is to reprogram your subconscious mind. So our subconscious mind was mostly programmed in the first 7 years of your life when you're a child. And this is because you're in theta brainwave. When you're a child in that first 7 years, you don't have a conscious mind. All you have is the subconscious mind. And so you're like a sponge that just soaks everything up, and you become a product of your environment. So if you're a small child like me, I had a lot of shit that happened in that first 7 years that programmed me in a negative way. And your subconscious programming controls 95% of your reality. So if you don't like the reality you're in, you don't like the results you're getting, I was the sort of person that would attract in narcissistic men in relationships. And that's a reflection of my relationship with my dad. And so we have to reprogram our subconscious so that we can attract better things in for us. Because again, it controls 95% of our reality. So start brainwashing yourself, start reprogramming yourself with positive beliefs. And the way you reprogram the subconscious mind is meditation. That's why I said meditation is a great spiritual practice. So what you want to do is when you go into a meditative state, your brainwaves will drop into theta. And so that's the same brainwave you were in when you're in the first 7 years of your life. And you're in this hypnotic state. And so while you're in this theta brainwave, there's 2 ways you can go about this. You can either be listening to an audio recording that's to program the subconscious mind. You can find these all over YouTube. That's just positivity, success, wealth, abundance, worthiness, all sorts of things like that. You just get it going into your subconscious mind whilst in theta brainwave, because when you're in theta brainwave, you're in the subconscious mind. That's how you can influence it in such a powerful way. The other way you can do this is using visualization, right? So again, you get your brainwaves to drop from beta, alpha to theta. As that happens, you break through the analytical mind. The analytical mind's the ego, the chatter brain that never shuts up. So when you're in theta brainwave, your thoughts stop. You've got no thoughts, no thinking. It's quiet. And you become pure consciousness. And this is where you can start visualizing your preferred reality. If you want that loving relationship, you visualize yourself being in a loving, healthy relationship. You want to be able to earn lots of money, you visualize yourself earning lots of money, right? And then what you must do is get emotionally involved. So you have to feel the emotions of having this thing that you want to bring in. And what else you can do is also get yourself to start feeling positive emotions in the body. So, for example, if you had a childhood where you were treated in a way where you felt like you weren't worthy, right? You're not worthy of being in this relationship. What you do is you just condition the body. You feel the emotions in the body of being worthy. And it's through repetition. You've got to do this every day. It's repetition gets the results, but over time, your subconscious programming will change. And when it does, you will notice it get reflected into the external environment, because like I said at the start of this video, the internal environment gets projected out, and that's what creates the external environment. So by changing the subconscious programming, the external environment will start changing, and that is how you create a much more positive life for yourself. This is how we stop self-sabotaging ourselves. This is how we can show up and have much more positive relationships with the people in our life. So I hope you liked this video and got some sort of value out of it. And if you did, let me know by smashing the like button or write a comment. And if you like this sort of content, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.